Are social media companies knowingly harming the mental health of our children? Well, that's what two school districts allege in a new lawsuit against companies that own Instagram, Snapchat, and other social media apps. Now, they claim that those sites have led to an uptick in depression, eating disorders, anxiety, and bullying amongst kids. Now, we did reach out to TikTok for comment about the lawsuit, but we were told that the company can't discuss pending litigation. However, it did say that it prioritizes the safety and well-being of teens by incorporating certain features on its platform. And Google, which owns YouTube, gave us this statement, saying in part, quote, "We have invested heavily in creating safe experiences for children," end quote. And Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, tells us that it's developed more than 30 tools to support teens and families. Here with me now is clinical psychologist, Dr. Riana Elyse Anderson. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Anderson. Now, we are seeing clearly that social media has huge impacts in a variety of ways, but we have to talk about the mental health of our youth, right? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think the first thing, Eboni, to note is that technology doesn't have to be bad. So it's a neutral thing, right? The ability to get information or to talk with one another, to come into community, that can be a neutral thing. But the two issues that we're seeing being the biggest challenge with young people is that it wasn't made for the developing youth, right? So like thinking about this cafeteria conundrum, if you're walking through this cafeteria and everyone's looking at you in a high school, that's already a bad thing. If it's across the United States, that's where we're starting to see that anxiety and depression tick up, where people think that everyone's looking at them and judging them. And then for the developing Black child in particular, yeah, we're thinking about how discrimination can influence them and how anonymous responses online can also be challenging for that Black child. So it can be a challenge, Eboni.
Yeah. Now, also, Doctor, we read those comments and statements that we've received in part from all the big tech companies that were responsive to us, and they're talking about the safeguards they have in place. They're talking about the steps that they are proactively taking to avoid negative impact, as you say, around children. But it clearly, like you said, doesn't have to be enough. I guess the question is there a correlation of responsibility to these tech companies, or at some point is this human behavior that has to take some responsibility?
That's a great point. So I do want to acknowledge what Instagram, what Facebook, what these other companies are doing by putting those things into place. They don't have to do that. They're companies that are trying to make $1 at the end of the day. So they could do whatever they want to keep those addictive qualities up on those apps, but they are trying to put in safeguards. So that's a great start. But you're absolutely right that we need so much support for young people around putting those features in place, like the focus settings or parents monitoring what's going on and having conversations with young people. Human behavior and human support does have to engage those features for it to work.
Yeah, and you said the magic word, for me at least, which is parents. Most kids don't have the bag to go out and buy phones and devices and apps and iPads. So parents at some point are facilitating this, which would certainly be the argument if I'm big tech, right? So what should parents be doing? First of all, are there certain ages in which a child even should be getting a phone or device? Are there certain hours that should be limited? What are your, recommendations, Doc?
Yeah, so we certainly know that young people are spending half their day on devices, and the data show that over 3 hours a day is where we're starting to see that uptick in depression and mental health challenges, right? So we want to make sure that we're limiting children's use to about 3 hours at max, and that's across the day. So that can be tough if it's morning and evening, and sometimes a sneak, at lunch, right? So it's important to have those conversations with our children to say, this is the hour, it's your time to use it, but you have this hour in the morning, you have this hour in the evening, and being very clear that that's the boundary. Being mindful that at 12, the brain is very different than 19. So being clear with your child, if you're gonna let them use it, smaller increments until they're ready to get to some of that deeper content when they get older. So being mindful of the developing child, setting those limits, and knowing the data can really be helpful for them.
Yeah. And of course, there's no magic answer, right? Every child, every parent, every community is different. But Dr. Anderson, if you had to kind of generally suggest when is an appropriate age for a young person to have their own accounts on, say, Instagram or TikTok, what's too young?
Yeah, I mean, again, thinking about going into high school as a period in which you're thinking about a larger and a different pool of folks. So under high school, that's really a challenge for young people to understand why some people have the latest product that they're able to see, like on a holiday, they're looking at someone getting something. That
Hmm.
can be hard for them to understand. Whereas in high school, maybe they're at a point where they can have that conversation with their parents or with their classmates around why do you have something and I don't. So this comparison lens
Yeah.
in middle school or before is really hard for young people to get. So I would say high school and beyond is appropriate time.
Okay, great. And I just have to say, because I'm a auntie at this point in life, I think the high school thing makes sense, but also know that colleges are looking at your social high school students. Know that, summer jobs and all that stuff all impacts, now these big grown up things that you are attempting to do and you will go on to do.
Yes.
Fantastic insight, Dr. Anderson. Thank you so much for weighing in on such an important topic.